What's good, y'all? Elite Live Streams. We back, man. Happy Friday night. It's a Friday night stream. You know what I'm saying? We back. And I'm feeling great, man. Been coming across a lot of really great content these last couple of days. Just been putting some things together for you guys. You know what I'm saying? Staying locked in. Appreciate everyone who's been subscribing to the channel, man. We are growing at the pace that I expect. And I really do appreciate everybody who comes through and shows love to us, man. We really do appreciate everybody who, you know what I'm saying, gives us the love and the grace. You know what I'm saying? So today, what are we talking about, man? We talking about foundational Black Americans and our indigenous lineage. You feel me? It's Black History Month. So you know we got to always come through bringing some receipts. And I'm going to stay on code. I'm going to stay on topic, man, because there's a lot of distractions that's happening right now. I'm seeing it. You know, people are out here putting threats on the lineage. We got people selling their soul to the DNC. We got a lot going on, y'all. So I think some of us got to stay on code while everybody else clean up the streets. So salute to everybody out there who's smashing the gas on people who have really trying to turn up on our lineage lately. They've been out here putting the, pedal to the metal, trying to, you know what I'm saying, create a divisive term around the foundational Black American lineage. They're calling us all types of names. They're putting threats on us. So I felt it was necessary for me to continue to stay on code and continue to bring what needs to be brought to the conversation. And that's staying on task, man. We got to make sure that we continue to stay on task. We continue to bring forward every single article and every single piece of evidence to make sure that every time people come back to these videos, they can reference them and they can say, hey, yo, B, man, I appreciate you bringing a certain perspective. And thank you so much for what you have done by bringing the historical aspect as well. So that's what we're going to do, man. We got to stand on business. We got to make sure we're continuing to amplify the voice of what is true, which is foundational Black Americans are the indigenous people of these lands. You feel me? And I wanted to make sure that we just bring that to the table. We making sure that we are doing the correct data and bringing forth, just something that we could all sit back and discuss. And, I wanted to start with the video that kind of, sparked this for me. And it was a video from, an interview that our brother, the Honorable, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he was talking to a brother who was, clearly part of a native lineage. And they were having a conversation about who were the real indigenous people of America. You know what I'm saying? And I thought, it kind of sparked this topic for me today. I wanted to bring it in for you guys. So I hope that, it's not freezing up on y'all, but we waiting a little bit, got a little bit of a little delay here. We gonna make sure it happens correctly. Let me see, make sure everything is solid on this side. Let me see, hold up. Okay, there we go. We in there. All right, y'all. So let me bring this up for you guys real quick. All right. Now, let me make sure I get this up on the screen here. Hold up. Let me make sure everything is correct. All right, there we go. All right, so let me pull that one down, pull this one up. There we go.
So how is it that there's so many more people that they claim
this is a war they never taught us?
Black or African Americans? I think they got the numbers wrong, because a lot of Native Americans are the ones that they're counting as Black folks too. If you were to walk into any mosque in America and you just laid your hands on the first person or the third person or the fifth person that you see, You realize that you're laying your hands on a Native American?
I believe
There were only 8% of the slaves that came to America. So how is it that there are so many more people that they claim are Black or African American? I think they got the numbers wrong.
I think they got the numbers wrong too. And I think it's pretty evident now, as you know, foundational Black Americans, we continue to smash the gas on everybody who's had something to say. All we do is bring receipts. And I think from a logical standpoint, where you have the elders who have been having these conversations for a very long time, our elders have been having these conversations for a very long time. And for a very long time, a lot of people have dismissed their stories, their accounts, and as well the receipts that they would bring forward. Naturally, as foundational Black Americans, we were saying, all right, you guys, we're going to keep ours to ourselves, and we're going to work to make sure that we back it up. A lot of us putting together our family trees, a lot of us going down each lineage to make sure, hey, man, we do see the indigenous roots that our grandparents told us about, that our great-grandparents told us about. Some of us have been here 3 generations already. So naturally, when you have people who have 5 generations of lineage that they can trace back, we start to now go ahead and do what? We start to take ownership of our lineage. And mind you, we have been the most reclassified people of all people across the diaspora, right? So naturally, when we're starting to say, okay, guys, look, man, we already told you guys who we were. We already letting you guys know, hey, we're not messing around. We're trying to let you guys know that eventually, once we start to actually get to where we want to be, we're going to take it further. And so as we continue to go ahead and smash the gas, bringing up the receipts, there are more and more, right, things that start to come up behind that. And so naturally, when I always say this, when a lot of foundational Black Americans not only start to do their family history, but they also start to explore the knowledge of self that comes with that. Now that's why you see so many different seeds of people coming at us in so many different directions, right? So many different factions of people trying their best, right, to make sure that they are putting us in a box, right? And mind you, at every turn, we continue to tell them, hey, guys, no, you can't do that because we already know who we are. We've been studying this for generations. We've been listening to our family members, and they've been locked in for a very long time. So there's no way that you guys could ever tell us who we are, right? So let's go. We got more videos. All right, we're gonna keep going because, like I said, we're just gonna talk about the indigenous people of America, who is us, the foundational Black Americans, all right? The true indigenous people, all right?
Black American freedmen, I want you to get ready because 2026, we're going to learn that we are the real American indigenous people. You're going to learn that because you're already seeing the seeds of it being planted, right? And you're already seeing so many Native tribes taking offense to this and trying to push their feathers and their dances in our faces, right? Well, you've been seeing seeds of this being planted all year long. Like, for example,
now listen, this is as well what I've been talking about when it also came to a knowledge of self movement, right? And this is something that I can speak to, right? Being on YouTube and kind of, exploring before I actually got into actually making videos and putting things together, there was a awakening that happens, right? Your knowledge of self journey, and especially going through YouTube, you come across a lot of stuff through the conscious community. And the conscious community was a very, very real source for a lot of men and women to go into learning about who they are, the history of who we are, where we've come from, and not only just what we learned in school, right? So naturally going through that, we started to see, when we started to learn and we started to explore ourselves. Let's see who's got here. We got Firebird Gray Wolf. He says, Lord, nobody wants to, hey, African blood anymore. you have erased the transatlantic slave trade. Bro, there was no erasure. All we're speaking on is a lineage, bro. That's all we're speaking on, brother. We're talking about the people who were here. We're not just talking about the slave trade, because we already discussed that, brother. You got to stay on topic, my guy. All right. Where are your treaties? Family. This is what we're talking about. So let me continue, right? Let's continue with what the brother is talking about here.
Example, we are seeing so many articles coming out of the European continent about Cheddar Man, about how all ancient ancestry linked to Europe is linked to African ancestry, about how all of them were dark skinned. And there's no person in their right mind who's going to say a white man who looks like Donald Trump started out looking as black as me or blacker, and then tell me that's not how all people looked.
Facts. And mind you, this is what we're talking about, Mr. Firebird Gray Wolf. If we already know that if they spread us the fraud, all of us being a part of, children of, listen, I'm not even going to speak on that, but we're us being spread across, right? Naturally, there were going to be foundational Black Americans right here as well. That's all we're saying. And the fact that so many people are getting bent out of shape about it is actually just ridiculous, because it's just history, guys. You guys got to stop being so sensitive. It's just history. History tells us that it would not be just Africans in Africa who were melanated people who were indigenous to those lands. There would also be indigenous people who were right here in North America before all of these colonizers came here. And there's history that backs it up all the way back to 1616. And mind you, this same history that we're talking about, I can trace my family through my own family tree to this exact time. So, Mr. Firebird, I will repeat, this is not about erasing anything from a transatlantic slave trade. This is only about speaking about who the people were who were the melanated people who were indigenous right here in America already before more slaves came here. And then when we were also enslaved by the colonizers who took over the lands. This is all we're talking about, brother. It's not that hard to follow. Like, it's very simple.
Right. You're going to learn more and more and more about that. And this is why right now you're seeing these weird pushes about us being together, how we're all the same people. Hey, we're all the same people. And you're noticing a lot of the people, and I don't want to make this about a colorism thing, but a lot of people who happen to be light.
All right, let me go ahead and speak on this point too, Firebird. Some people are not, and that's their lineage. Why would you try to tell somebody who they are when you don't know them? You guys have gotten too comfortable on the internet trying to tell people who they are, and you do not know them. You don't know their history. You don't know their family history. You need to do some research before you guys go trying to tell people exactly where they're from if you don't know them. Why would I get online talking to strangers and trying to tell them who they are and I don't know them and their family lineage? Like, I don't know what, you have to say, bro, but you're on some other type of time, dog. And we definitely don't have any time for that, bro, at all. Like, at all, bro. So, yeah, where did you disappear to? I'm right here, family. I don't know what you're talking about. Continue.
Skin. Are you not noticing them coming forward saying, hey, we got to squash all the talk about racism, all the talk about stuff because there was slavery everywhere. It was this problem everywhere. You're going to see that being pushed hardcore in 2026, because simultaneously you're going to see more revelations about who the true American indigenous are. And the reason why you're going to see that more and more increase is because some of the archaeologists and some of the scientists, they've been finding more and more and more evidence of this.
And this is what I continue to tell you guys. There has been an overt and direct attack, okay, on the history and as well the documentation of the history of foundational Black Americans. We're seeing it right here in real time. So you cannot tell me that is not a direct tactical move, because what is happening right now in the grassroots on the internet and on social media. Foundational Black Americans are now taking their own initiative to what? Go out here and study their family history. Go out here and study the history of what happened in America, the things that we did not learn in school. A lot of people are gaining knowledge of self right now. And what is that? That's through the grassroots of what the Foundational Black Americans have done through delineation and through an organizational push to make sure that we are 100% locked in on what we need and what we want for us, and putting ourselves first. Whatever that may be, I really don't care, man. I really do not care. I said nobody is from Africa. Where are the tribes, bro? You're just talking. I gotta keep on code, brother, because we got a show to produce, my brother.
Prime example. What we've been finding is that tracking human ancestry is not so much linked to climate. It's not so much linked to location. It's linked to the radiation record. Because see, our dark skin is a reaction to ultraviolet UV radiation, not so much heat, because you can have high exposure of sun in very, very cold places. You know, that is biologically possible. So with that being said, what we're finding is that you can trace human ancestry along the equator line, and sometimes the equator line didn't always show where the sunlight was being shown at. And so the reason why you had light skin or white people develop is because you want to prevent things like rickets, a debilitating condition that comes from a lack of vitamin D that you get from ultraviolet UV radiation. Mm-hmm. So next year and years going beyond that, you're going to hear more and more revelations of this. And the way that I notice beyond a shadow of a doubt, I'm hearing a lot of white people talk about this. Are y'all not seeing this?
I told people this for many years. Okay, I told people this for many years, that eventually all the tables do turn, and naturally through delineation and what we've seen now, the melanated people, the melanated indigenous people of this country are foundational Black Americans. We've been talking about this for a while now. And like I was mentioning, the conscious community, way before right now, right? Way before, foundational Black American was even a term. The foundational Black American community, where Tariq Nasheed came from, with the conscious community. And the conscious community, a lot of people have been talking about what it meant to be a Moor and what it meant to be a Native Indigenous American, what it meant to be a person who was indigenous, copper-colored person who were here before anybody was even brought here on ships. And what did we start to see as well? We started to go through our family history, and we started to see, wait, there's an admixture around what? The year 1600. We're starting to see, okay, well, if this is the first documentation of where my quote unquote family started, and this is all based on documentation, okay? So if there's no documentation from the 1600 above, we now have questions. And like he says, more things have now started to come to a head, to where now even white Americans, white Native American tribes have had to go out of their way to do the same research, because this has been something that has been, oh, wow, it's a revelation. We can't believe that this information is now so readily available. And like I said, that's why there is a full-on attack to erase foundational Black American history in any capacity, whether it be in museums, whether it be in displays for foundational Black Americans, whether it be our own spaces. They have found ways to defund these places and to wipe it out. Why? Because we are now starting to go ahead and ask questions. We are digging more and more. And that's the point. The more that they push it away, all right, the more it's going to continue for us to keep asking questions. And that's why they messed up. They messed up when they went ahead and allowed us to say, you know what, all right, cool. We're going to choose ourselves. We're going to delineate from everybody else. And now we just going to focus on what we got to focus on. And guess what that did? That started a fucking movement. And that's where we at right now, a straight up movement. Okay, so look, more of this. All right, so this talks about, I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Gangs of New York. We always talk about how New York was built by foundational Black Americans. So this is talking about those tribes of that time. All right.
It is showing you an occupation in real time. Long before those boats ever arrived, the Lenape, the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, the Cherokee, the Seminole, the Mohawk, the Narragansett, and the Washita, who were the original Moorish tribes, were right here ruling and defending their own land with allodial sovereignty. Look at the walls. That is not set design. It is documentation. DiCaprio walks past framed indigenous Moors clueless to the fezzes, turbans, and liberty caps.
All right.
Those images are there to tell you that so-called Black people were already established in New York long before the manufactured white origin story ever got.
All right. So a lot of people ask me about my name, right? Brandon B, Brandon Bay, right? My handle on Instagram is Surfmore. Right? And a lot of people talk about, oh, that's cool little wordplay, whatever. Yeah. But that's because I already knew this information. A lot of this information that we're talking about, the Moors and the indigenous people of America, I've known this information for a very long time based on not only my own personal research, but learning from as well my family, coming from a family where we had family reunions, where we went down our family tree. And it was very important for us to make sure that we stayed connected to those indigenous roots. But at the same time, I also understood that there was a whole faction of people who would you bring these up as a foundational Black American. You tell them, hey, man, nah, my family is Choctaw. My family is Cherokee. My family is Muskogee, right? We were actually from Oklahoma. We have family in Oklahoma that came down to Clarksville, Texas. And then we stayed in Clarksville, Texas and had 2 farms. You know what I'm saying? You explain. But a lot of people cannot comprehend that because they have been conditioned to believe that a certain, faction of people are considered the real indigenous people of America. And now, like I said, foundational Black Americans continue to prove without a shadow of a doubt who we are every single time, right? So let's continue because this keeps going. Hold on, let me make sure, you know what I'm saying? We keep going here.
In fact, the name New York itself traces back to York, a Moorish indigenous Black man whose role in early America gets deliberately minimized.
All right, we told you guys, New York was built by foundational Black Americans. The pictures shown from the past in Siberia have melanin. That's facts. I mean, what are we going to talk about, man? I'm just saying, bro, when we explain to people that there were definitely people who were brought here on ships, no doubt about it. We understand that. Our admixture mixed in with as well who? The indigenous melanated people of America. That makes sense. We talked about the numbers very early on in the stream where he said the numbers just don't add up. And that's true. The numbers do not add up. So we need the numbers to make sense if this is what we're going to be doing, right? And that's why it's important to always bring receipts. Always.
He was a guide, pathfinder, and diplomat, leading Europeans through forests and territories they did not know how to survive in. There are statues of York today, most notably in Portland, Oregon, Washington Park. Standing tall is a rare public commemoration of an indigenous Black man who shaped American geography before the corporate rewrite.
All right, this was an indigenous Black American who was integral in showing, okay, these first very early explorers how to get and survive in the wilderness in America, man. His history has been wiped away because they cannot admit to the fact that this whole setup everywhere we are right now was built on the backs of foundational Black Americans. They cannot admit to it because if they do, that does what? That puts the power back to the people, to the indigenous people of this country, which is who? Us, the foundational Black Americans. It's just facts, man. It's just facts. Like, I mean, I can say whatever I want.
Now look at Tammany Hall. And that was not politics, that was an occupation headquarters. The name itself comes from Tamanend, the Lenape chief, literally tan man in a hat, a direct reference to the Moorish fez. The name Manhattan itself is Tai Tamanend, tan man in a hat. At the first city hall, the 44 Union Square. That symbol at the top is the Lenape Moorish fez stamped into stone.
This is what I try to tell people, man, when you're going through your own knowledge of self journey. And like I said, very early on in the early 2000s, if you was on YouTube and you was on that journey on watching Sonetta TV, you feel me? Watching Tariq, watching Umar, you feel me? Watching the debates, you understood, right? Tariq Bey, you feel me? The debates that were happening in that conscious community at that time were empowering a lot of us young Black folks at that time, to where now everything comes full circle, right? Everything comes full circle. And so all that information that we talked about, all those people, all those players, right? Shout out to Tariq, you know what I'm saying? Becoming one of, the figureheads right now, but at the same time, him being around to share that knowledge very early on helped a lot of us now on the back end, to where now we can go ahead and articulate ourselves in a certain manner that makes sense, not only to us, but to people who don't understand our lineage and who don't understand that foundational Black Americans are indigenous to this country, right? A lot of people don't know that. And so when you got to take time with this stuff, because it is very shocking. It is very off-putting, because everything that we was told was a lie. You feel me? And that's just what it is. Like, straight up, Lewis and Clark had York. He spoke the language of the natives. That's because he was a native. Because he was native. Okay? That's just what it is. As much as people try to sugarcoat it, whatever, he was native. And they literally erased his history. Okay? Erased it.
Marking the Moorish origin of the ground the whole corrupt system was built on. Boss Tweed ran New York like a captured city, robbing it through ballots, debt, and legal paperwork instead of open warfare. Tweed was described as the most corrupt man on earth, a killer whose methods and science were later studied and adopted by Hitler and Nazi Germany. This history is so sensitive that if you mention Boss Tweed or Tammany Hall to a lawyer today, they will shut up, because those names represent the true corrupt origin of the current legal system.
Listen, man, I try to tell people this all the time, that the fact of the matter is Nazi Germany was inspired by what was happening to foundational Black Americans in America, okay? That was one of their biggest inspirations to do what they did, okay? So when we talk about the plight and how bad we had it, nobody will ever really understand, because this was so early. This stuff was happening at the very, very foundation of this country. So to try their best to erase the history, to try their best to suppress the history, to try their best to make people forget is 100% by design. They are doing that on purpose, because they know, like we know, the atrocities that they participated in can never be forgiven. And the fact that they have literally made us forget our history, come on, man, we can never do that. We can never, ever allow ourselves to forgive them for this. This is just, it's despicable work.
That whole 5 Points Zone Canal Street, Tribeca, Greenwich Village, was known as Little Africa, Lenape Land, and the Lenape were Moors. When the Bowery Boys occupied the entrance to Broadway on Wall Street, specifically to terrorize the original Moors out of their territory. They acted as street-level enforcers, terrorizing the original Moorish population until they could be reclassified as Indian, Negro, or contraband, to strip the original inhabitants of their international standing and steal their allodial land titles, to box us into the 14th Amendment slave status and facilitate the takeover of our estates. The Lenape were Moors, and they were already living, organizing, and owning the land long before the immigrant influx. The very trails they used for travel became Broadway, and their underground trails were expanded to become the New York City subways, showing that reality would collapse the immigrant turf war myth. That was a calculated population replacement strategy. They shipped in Slavic and Slovenian populations as weaponized labor under the Transportation Act.
Listen, man, doesn't that sound very familiar to what's happening with immigration and a lot of foundational Black Americans in the workplace? Sounds pretty familiar to me, especially when we had our own towns, we had our own areas, when we had very, very large portions of New York City. What happened? What happened to all those businesses? What happened to all that land? What happened to all those places that were occupied by foundational Black Americans, Native Americans, like they spoke on? I wonder what happened. You know what happened. I don't need to tell you what happened, but I'm just, you know, we're going through this. We're talking about it. Like I said, we're going to talk about the indigenous people. All right. That's just what it is. It says, why does your guest feel that people are trying to push culture practices on him? If I'm correct, why does your guest? What do you mean guest? You're gonna have to explain that to me, bro.
Which was a legal form of white slavery. These immigrants were handed guns and uniforms to fight in recovery wars like the Civil War, to seize land from the indigenous Moorish proprietors. The rampant savagery manufactured by these gangs provided the perfect pretext to establish the NYPD, which was formed not for public safety, but to act as militarized catchers and enforcers for the municipal corporate state. By the end of the film, as that corporate skyline rises over the graves, you are looking at a parasitic city built directly on top of Moorish sovereignty. So again,
listen, man, I try to tell y'all all the time, all right? The fact of the matter is, when we look at any of these major cities, any of this major foundational parts, we know what happens, y'all. We know what happens. Foundational Black Americans are always the ones who have to take the brunt of that. You feel me? And so that's why it's important that we continue to smash the gas and not allow anybody to tell us who we are or define who we are, because we've done the work and we have the historical background to make sure that we continue to get what we need. You feel me? So let's continue on this video.
I was doing some research into the background of the natives, the native tribes here, the red natives, kicking us out of the tribes partially because they wanted to preserve their racism, but also because they wanted to get more casino profits. Basically, the more members that you kick out, the more per capita payments that you get from those casino profits.
All right, so we always talk about this. There was a lot of backstabbing that went on during those times where a lot of foundational Black Americans were doing the work to make sure that they were getting the paperwork done, making sure that they were a part of the Civilized Tribe Treaty. And so naturally that would do what? That would entitle them to a lot of money and a lot of land grants. And so naturally, a lot of these chiefs sold out a lot of their people because the money was just so good for these casinos. The money was just so good that they sold out their entire tribes, okay? Specifically, Black American tribes, okay?
Because a lot of tribes can actually get profits, and they can get per capita payments per adult in that tribe. So when I was researching that, I ran into a Hispanic woman. And she's talking about Walter Plecker, about how Black people were reclassified, about how the real natives were most likely Black people. A lot of Black people talking about how we have Native American ancestors and how they weren't slaves and how they were here for a long time and how they were copper colored or darker. My grandmother told me that. And my grandmother, everything that my grandmother told me about our ancestry so far has checked out.
Listen, this is just facts, okay? Like a lot of people, they come on here, they come on the internet, and they don't necessarily know what they're talking about. They don't have any real connection to their lineage. They don't have any real leg to stand on when they try to discredit what a Black American's history is. We are going off of real accounts, right? From the people who are directly a part of our family. And the fact that we have to fight with people about that is just crazy, where it's like, no, yo people was lying. Why? why would people lie about a lineage? All right. Why would people lie about what actually happened? Okay. Why would people lie about the things that we had gone through? They wouldn't. So naturally, if we're asking our grandparents, if we're saying, okay, hey, we don't really know what's going on. We wanted to know this, grandma. How can you tell us about this? Can you tell us about grandpa? Can you tell us about who they were and what they did? And they had all the history for us. They had everything to back it up. And so naturally, you know, this is my family right here, right? This is my great grandfather right there in the middle. Okay. And so when you look at these were the first, okay, this is the early 1800s right here. So naturally, when you have these people who are still alive, my great grandmother right there with the red hair sitting on the very bottom, I grew up with her. She told me stories about who they were, okay? And the woman sitting above her is a Native American. All right, there's no debate, okay? We have the history, we have. All right, that's that. So now, when we have those stories, there's a lot of Black Americans who have the same experiences and who have the same account, just like he's speaking on right now.
Now, I've traced my own ancestry up to Rhode Island, to slavery in Rhode Island, in Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. I mean, even New York. But some lines of my family just goes cold. Black people, some of them were marked Native American. Mm-hmm. Now I'm having a really hard time deciphering between is this my side of the family that was enslaved by the Choctaw, or were they people that were already here? Because let me appeal to your reasonable senses. My grandmother told me as a child that we descend partially from a white woman who married a Black slave in Rhode Island, and the white woman was called a witch. This is why my grandmother was very superstitious, but she never liked to use the word witchcraft.
Listen, man, there was a lot, like I said, there were a lot of stories that a lot of us as foundational Black Americans heard from our grandparents or great grandparents, and they would, you know, have a certain way that they moved, certain things that they did that were considered country, or that was considered something natural, that was considered, like he speaks on, maybe it might have been a little magic, maybe it was a little bit of hoodoo going on, but a lot of us saw those things firsthand. And so it's like when people try to discredit, it just doesn't make sense to me because you guys don't know. You don't know.
If anyone who knew my grandmother would tell you that woman was superstitious as hell, and that some of the stuff that she did was borderline witchcraft, but nobody ever called it that. And anybody who knows anything about hoodoo, you know what it means when an older Black woman is called mother a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know what it means when she knows how to work with roots. You know what it means when she's somehow an animal whisperer. Just out of nowhere. Hanging all kind of weird reefs and stuff and mojo bags. You know what that means. A lot of our grandmothers and our foremothers, they would practice hoodoo, but they would never say anything because that fits into the concept of the invisible church, or practicing hoodoo right out in the open while pretending to be a Christian. Because that's how we did it during slavery, and that's how we survived. That's how we plan rebellions. That's how we plan escapes. That's how we got down.
Listen, man, this was a lot of, you know, like I said, the connection that a lot of us had to the spiritual realm. A lot of us had to the land. Okay, my grandpa had a full-on, fully functioning garden in his backyard because he grew up on a farm. So when I grew up and I would go to my grandparents' house, they would have vegetables and fruit and everything all in their backyard. All right. Pets and all this other type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because that's how they grew up. That's how they were raised. And so naturally, that was a part of our culture. Growing up with an organic mindset, growing up with a self-sufficient mindset. All right. That generation came from that. So all these stories, they track because we've all experienced this one way or another. as a foundational Black American, you've heard these stories from your grandparents, from your great-grandparents, whoever, you know what I'm saying?
But back to the main point of this, you're going to hear about a lot of this stuff. You're going to hear about people admitting that Columbus saw Black people when he went to Hispaniola, you know, the place that we now call the one half Dominican Republic and the other half Haiti. Yeah. You know, that's why I had a spat with the Salem Witch Trial, the Salem Witch Trials Museum. I told them, hey, listen, the first victim of the Salem Witch Trials was a Black woman named Tituba. You're claiming that she's Native, and the only reason why you're saying that she's Native is because her husband was a red Native named Indian John, or John, or John Indian, or John the Indian. So yeah, oftentimes when you're racially ambiguous, especially as a woman back during that time, when you got married, you assume the racial identity of your husband. That was very common. And how would I know that? I descend from a white woman who married a Black slave. So in the freaking Northeast, where the Salem Witch Trials also happened. So I would somewhat be a bit of an expert given who I'd freaking descend from, you know? So I'm having a spat with him like, hey, she also practiced hoodoo. Cotton Mather, the witch hunter, even said that. And they're doing the whole I'm white and I say so stuff. I guarantee you next year and the years beyond that, they're not going to give the same answer. See, I already know that the University of Oregon and the University of California at Riverside and the Smithsonian, I already know that they're working on this stuff as we speak. A lot of people are starting to confess those Olmec statues, they're African. Because there's just too much about South America and any place that's underneath the United States of America that seems too African. I mean, how dare a Mexican say that I have no African roots?
Listen, man, this is where we're talking about. These are all things that we've all talked about. The indigenous melanated people of many lands. We've been spread across, right? Those 12 tribes, okay? That's what we know. So if we've been spread across, that doesn't just mean that we were just in Africa. That means that we were spread everywhere, y'all, everywhere. All y'all, okay? We were spread around to different places, all right? We were definitely here for a very, very long time, man. And that's just what it is, bro. So, you know, now that we've started to discover that, right, we start to see more people who have taken on a different way. All right. And they did their own research and they looked at their family lineage. And this is what they're doing now, which I respect.
Here, I will no longer be referring to my people as Black folk. I will be referring to my people as Indigenous Americans. If y'all have an issue with it, it doesn't matter.
There was a paper genocide that occurred. And there was the officials in Virginia deliberately expunged the records. They destroyed the official records and most of the private records. I mean, I've got a statement that gets into the whole thing, but basically, a lot of Virginia's ruling elite claimed to be blood descendants of Pocahontas. And in their view, that meant that no one else in Virginia could make a claim that they were Native American, a descendant of Pocahontas, because to do so would mean that Virginia's ruling elite would have to be classified as all other non-whites were, which was, in quotes, and this was the law, the inferior Negroid race. This is what it was about.
Listen, y'all, okay? We told you guys, all right? A lot of those records, things that are very integral to historical documentation, were deliberately destroyed, all right? And in certain capacities, this is what's happening today, okay? All things, man, all things come full circle. And that's why I try to tell people, man, nothing is new underneath the sun. And the fact that they're doing that is a deliberate attack on the historical documentation of foundational Black Americans, man. This is happening. And it's all facts, man. This is on Congress, okay? This is on Congress. This is literally under oath, all right? Indian Affairs Committee, all right? So this ain't just no regular meeting of the minds. No, this is some real stuff that happened.
And with enormous hypocrisy, Virginia's ruling elite pushed policies, got them passed, and it culminated with the Racial Integrity Act of 1924.
All right, racists, we're going to address this again since the inferior people are struggling. Black Americans are the only indigenous people on this land. Melanated people are the only people around the world who are indigenous on every land, no matter their ethnic group. Uncivilized lands all have the same genetic connection, melanated skin with varying shades of brown. And those groups are not connected to Africa, just like Black Americans aren't connected to Africans ethnically. The actual American Indian, known as the Black Americans, are the ethnic group of North America, not descendants of Africans. Let's dismantle the greatest public relations fraud ever committed, the desperate multiracial campaign to erase the true indigenous Black American from this land. There is a coordinated effort, a relentless lie, designed to make Black Americans believe they are a guest in someone else's house. But the unchangeable archaeological and historical truth is that Black Americans are the foundation. They were here first. And by here, I mean the world, every country, every strip of land. And they built the civilization that we are all destroying. The lie about Africa is to confuse and mislead so that the theft can keep going on. Black Americans weren't even considered African American until 1988 by Jesse Jackson.
Listen, man, this is just hard truths. Like, he just hitting you all truths. Like, going straight at y'all with nothing but facts. And that's just what it is, man. I don't really enjoy having to go back and forth with people. You know what I'm saying? I leave that for like others to handle, because I think there's people in this space who specifically have that, part that makes it work. My goal is to continue to stick to the facts and the historical standpoints, right? And historically, we have proven that foundational Black Americans are the indigenous people of America. And we have to continue to raise that awareness, right? Because so many people just do not know, and they don't want to know. So our goal is to continue to smash the gas on y'all so that we don't have to explain it. All right. It's very easy. And that's why I'm going to keep making videos like this. I'm going to keep doing live streams about this, because this is my lane. All right. My lane is to bring up the historical data and to make sure that y'all get it. Like, nah, we ain't just finna let y'all just go ahead and try to, make this go over nobody's head. Nah, we're gonna make it clear that our lineage is rock solid and the historical standpoint is always going to be backed up. Like, what are we talking about, man? Like, come on now.
Unknown Cherokee Indian. So they'll pay a Black American leader to lie and sell out while classifying himself correctly despite the lie. If Black Americans came from Africa by boat in the 1600s, America didn't figure this out until 1988. And this isn't just a white lie. This is a lie woven by $5 pretendians, by secret treaties between immigrant groups, by decades of policy and propaganda, all aimed at one single goal: convincing the world that the original people of the soil simply do not exist. They have every story in the world about the false history. And then you ask for ship manifest and evidence of ships, and then suddenly they can't produce them. But they could show you evidence of the Titanic hundreds of feet under the ocean. They won't even show you the entirety of the Titanic under the water. Only a corner of this ship. They still parse that history. They have reclassified the true indigenous people, renamed you, and redrawn maps around you, hoping you would forget the land your spirit is made from. Now they deploy their little native influencers online, armed with fraudulent petitions and digital picket signs, begging platforms to remove you from your own story. They're performing.
Listen, man, we told y'all for real, like, this was going to happen, that as soon as Foundational Black Americans started to make this push for our historical backing and backing up our points, we started to see now the attack from all these other groups. All these other groups now have come out of nowhere, trying to discredit, trying to talk down, trying to do whatever they can. And mind you, it ain't been working, man. It's actually been quite ineffective, because the movement is still moving and delineation ain't stopping. So it is what it is. Y'all can lie and do whatever you want to do, but we standing on business, man.
A pathetic pantomime of indigeneity. If you are indigenous, why would you need outside help? What are they protecting? If you're truly indigenous Native Americans, how could someone take that from you? By the sudden panic. Every post they make, every petition they circulate is an admission. You've been caught, and now history will be made. Every other race are the visitors. It is time, Black Americans. Time for you to start acting like the host in your home, because all of this is yours. It is time you start acting like the host.
If, in fact, Black people are not indigenous to this land, and I'm not talking about Africans who have came over here who were brought on slave ships. I'm talking about before that, the dark-skinned people of this land. Now, of course, people are going to say, oh, no, they look like, you know, the Native Americans who we've learned about in our early history and Foundation of America. But no, there were people here who were darker than that, okay?
This is facts, man. We talk about this pretty heavily on this channel, is the fact that it doesn't need to be said about what that is, because I can show you guys right now, right? Let me pull this down real quick. Let me pull that down, and then I'll pull that up. All right, look at this. My great-great-grandfather right there, great-great-grandfather, three great, right? Right there in the middle. Okay, he was Native American, and look how dark his skin was. Him and his wife right next to him, all right, both Native. So this illusion, like he said, this illusion of what y'all thought the natives were, it's not. It's all a lie, okay? It was all fake. Just because what? We already talked about it. They wanted those land grants. They wanted those casinos, okay? They didn't want to share. Greed.
If Black people are not indigenous to this land, why are there HBCU colleges predominantly in the South?
Okay.
Tulsa, Oklahoma was the epicenter for Black Wall Street. Mind you, if you follow history, you know that all the Native and indigenous people were pushed into Oklahoma. And then they gave it an Indian reservation, Indian land. But Black people weren't indigenous?
I mean, y'all help me understand. That's a very good question. The brother brings a very good question, right? I mean, let's go back, because I mean, I think that's a good question. Let me bring it back just so y'all could hear the brother.
Tulsa, Oklahoma was the epicenter for Black Wall Street. Mind you, if you follow history, you know that all the Native and indigenous people were pushed into Oklahoma. And then they gave it an Indian reservation, Indian land. But
okay. Listen, man, my family directly has origins to Oklahoma. So I have a very extensive documentation. But the funny thing is, this is just facts. A lot of those people who were pushed from different tribes all had to go to Oklahoma. All right? That's just facts. And what was in Oklahoma? Black
people weren't indigenous? I've never seen a government of people work so hard to decimate one specific group of people. And we're talking about COINTELPRO. We're talking about crack being introduced into the hoods and the ghettos. We're talking about the gang wars in the 90s, okay? Y'all stay trying to create the new thing that will help us eliminate ourselves. Whether it be promiscuity, drugs, alcohol, again, gang violence. And then you have to wonder, that's why you pit the Mexicans and the Blacks together during the 90s so bad. When I was growing up in Southern California, gang wars between East LA and Compton, that was bad. And
it's still bad, all right? I'm here, it's still bad, okay? The relations between Black Americans and Hispanics in general, Latinos here in California is very bad. It's always been that way. It's just something that we deal with and we move on from it. But it is very much not changed, okay? It's been this way for a minute now, you know what I'm saying? And we just deal with it.
I think that is by design, just like the motherfucking Bloods and Crips, by design. But we don't see the Native Americans out here, the ones who are upset that we're trying to lay any claim to being on this land and this land belonging to us as well. Y'all ain't trying to hear that. But at the same time, there's no historically Native American colleges. And then you have to wonder the 5 civilized tribes who were recognized by the United Constitution or whatever they were called at the time were recognized. Why? Because basically you guys sold out your people to be deemed as civilized tribes, not the savages. So the white people at the time deemed your tribe, because the chief or person in charge at the time went along with the okie doke. So they said, okay, fine, y'all could be part of the fold. But don't sit up here and be like, black people can't be indigenous to this land, because the word black is a color, for one. It was a term that was described for people who were just of a darker skin color. And then you have to think about, too, when they were really trying to classify black and brown people into like where they would fall, and then it came to like the mixing with white, they had that whole drop of blood. If you had 1 drop of blood, you were considered black. Then there was the paper bag test to deem if if you could be accepted into white culture, or if even white culture would accept you regardless of your color. Like, if you acted a certain way, then they might accept you. But it was all based on, it was like a case by case basis. And so these people running around doing the census were just identifying people as they saw fit, or as the people who were running it saw fit. So the term native, the term indigenous, the term black, Negro, colored, all kind of got convoluted and mixed into one. So they couldn't really tell. They had to go based off of skin color, honestly. But I just find it funny that now all of a sudden people are getting mad because they're like, oh, black people are trying to claim that they're Native American, they're indigenous. And it's like, baby, you have to understand, you learned the same history that we did in public school. A lot of us did, okay? I do understand that, Native Americans have their tribes that they belong to, and they pass down history that way too. But also, a lot of history has been distorted, whitewashed, twisted, and to benefit the people who are running the show. But the more I see the spirit of black people, especially when we get together, Beach, it be strong as shit. It be strong. I just saw a video of this band, this HBCU band, and I'm playing, and it's like, that is like the spirit of people, of us people, when we get together, is just something that is just totally unmatched.
It's spiritual. It's a spiritual connection that can not be described. You feel me? It is a different feeling that we have for one another. It's a way that we go about each other, and the way that we have built a camaraderie over time, being that we've all kind of gone through these very, very unfortunate situations in our lives. And now that we are here, we're standing up and we're standing on business, and we're making sure that, hey, man, y'all ain't just going to disrespect our lineage. You know what I mean? We're going to come through and we're going to make sure that we are doing our part. And that's what we see now. You know what I'm saying? We see more and more people who have come to the forefront, who have expressed what their family lineage is and their history, and why they feel that they're on another level. You know what I'm saying? And I think that now that we've started to see more that Black Americans are proving their lineage, and that we are making sure that we are backing it up with facts, we're going to start seeing more people who are going to try to attack that. So it's on us to do the work and make sure that we are smashing the gas continually and not allowing anyone to dictate who we are and what we are. And so, yeah, y'all like to hop on for an hour, you know what I'm saying, do what I do. But I thought this was an important stream to make sure that I continue to bring to you guys, you know what I'm saying, so that we can continue to amplify the real history of who we are and why they're trying to suppress that. You feel me? So salute to all you guys out there. Thank you guys for liking and subscribing. Make sure that you guys subscribe to the channel, man, because we are trying to grow. We're trying to better ourselves. We're trying to make sure that we reach our goals. And we can't do that without you guys subscribing. So make sure, if you guys enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed the live stream, please subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate it as we continue to grow. Thank you all, and I'm out, man. Brandon B, Elite Media, and I'm out, man. Thank you.